Welcome to Take the Lead Radio with Dr. Diane Hamilton, where she interviews some of the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and other individuals who will inspire you to take the lead in your career and personal life. And now, here is Dr. Diane Hamilton.
Welcome to Take the Lead Radio. I'm Dr. Diane Hamilton, and I'm so glad you joined me today because my guest is Marcel Kuhn. He is a speaker, coach, and founder of Unthinkable Mastermind, and also the author of Unthinkable Life Teachings from a Soul Surfer. It's so nice to have you here, Marcel.
Thank you so much for having me. I've waited for this moment for years.
Well, I've known you for years, and I know you've been working on a book for a long time. And I was so honored that you asked me to look at it and make comments because I know you put your heart and soul into this. And I'm very excited to get into that. But I want to get a little backstory on you first. A lot of people want to know what led you to this level of success. So just can you tell me your backstory?
Okay. Yeah, I can tell you my backstory. So I come from Switzerland, so a landlocked country, and I was brought up in a family of entrepreneurs. My great uncle actually invented the pressure cooker in 1949, which was a huge innovation. And so this
awesome.
Family business is like the fifth generation now. And in the 1960s, my grandfather and great uncle, because they had such a success in the company, they helped the Tibetan refugees in Switzerland to get jobs in housing.
Wow.
So the philanthropy is a part of the family DNA. So they helped those refugees to come to Switzerland, and then they realized that they needed to have the foundation, and they needed to have a home to practice their religion. I don't know if it's the correct word, but they wanted to create the space that they feel at home. So together with His Holiness Dalai Lama, they created a monastery in Switzerland, and now it's I think it's the biggest Tibetan literature library in all of Europe. And many famous Buddhists like Tina Turner, who lives in Switzerland, and Richard Gere, who is also a well-known Buddhist, they come there and visit. And so they created this monastery, and they have 12 monks. And in my book, I also had the chance to interview the abbot of the current abbot of the monastery. So that's my understanding of success. So first, you're successful, and when you're successful, you do something that impacts. So do philanthropy, and that was the model of reference for me. And this put a lot of pressure on me. No one in my family ever told me to be successful, but that's what I expected from me, and this put a lot of stress on me because I stress myself to do something like that, to have a legacy, to impact like on a worldwide scale. And that's what I thought was success and fulfillment.
That's a lot of pressure for somebody. And I think that, it's part of what I wrote about it in terms of curiosity, how our environment will have a big impact on which way we go and what we look into. And you're obviously very curious, and I love that. And you probably got a lot of that from your environment of all that background. But what inspired you to write this book, Unthinkable? Because I know you had some different ideas as we've talked through the years of what you wanted to write about. So what made you land on this?
Yeah, I feel the topic of the book was my kind of search.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was chasing success. I was searching for it all my life. I always felt a lack. I felt not good enough. Mm-hmm. And so I was always looking at people. Why are they successful? Why is my brother successful? My dad? Why is I have two brothers, so I'm the middle one. I was always asking myself, why are those people successful? And I always looked for outside, like for completion from the outside. And then I was I had moderate success. I was a lean manager, lean consultant in corporations, and I was working at Nestle in 2015, and then a member of the family passed away in a tragic accident, and that really that really disrupted my life, because when you're young in the 20s and 30s, you believe you will be 100. So as a 20-year-old, as a 30-year-old, you think you have like an eternity left, and it doesn't matter how you use the time. So the youth, the young people, they use all their energy to be successful, and they don't realize that they have to enjoy their 20s and 30s now, because it will not come back. So a family tragic caused me to take a deep look at myself. At the funeral, I asked myself, who would come to my funeral? What is my legacy? What would people say about me? What would my 3 sons say about me? And out of this question, I asked myself, why are some people successful and fulfilled and other people not? And I had this idea to write a book where I would ask 1,000 people on success and fulfillment. And so I went out there, within 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I had a title, and it was called Achievers, 1,000 Ways to Success and Fulfillment. And I had 10 questions. And without having an idea, like you have interviewed, the top people in leadership worldwide. And I had no idea how to do an interview. So I just went out there, and I had these 10 questions. I didn't even have a recording device. I just went out there, and I think the second guest was John Matone, who used to be the leadership coach of Steve Jobs 1 year before he passed. So I was surprised that people would come back to me. And so that's how the book started, with this kind of setting. That's how it started.
Well, it's very interesting, because it's close to how I felt. I wanted to find out why people were curious, and I wanted to interview all these amazing people, and that kind of led to my interest in the curiosity work I've done. But I mean, you mentioned an example of somebody who you think was really interesting, but you had a lot of people, as you mentioned, who you've interviewed. So I'm curious if there's like an inspiring story that stood out to you or stands out to you, or examples of insights that really blew you away.
I think so. I think one of the people I found really exciting and inspiring was Mustafa Salame, who was born as a refugee, Palestinian refugee. He was born in a refugee camp with 9 siblings. And he had his father wasn't able to get enough money to feed his children. So he helped his father, because I think he was the oldest. So he helped his father to feed the family. And he had this big dream of becoming a hotel food and beverage manager. And he was at that time, he was living in Jordan. And he ended up making it. He was working in a restaurant, and then he met someone who gave him a job for the ambassador of Jordan in England, and that's from there he went on, studied hotel management, and he became the food and beverage manager from Sheraton. But at one night, so he was really reaching his dream, and he was really successful at what he thought was successful. But one night he wakes up from a vivid dream at 3 a.m. in the morning, and he had a dream of praying on the top of Everest, and so he was not working out, and he set his mission of doing that, of going up to. Oh, I'm sorry, the beep. Sorry. So he had this mission to go up there to Mount Everest, and he did it. And he got endorsement from the King of Jordan, and from not having hiked, the only sport he was doing was lifting the beer and smoking and partying. Mm-hmm. And he went 3 months later. He already climbed, and as a refugee, as how he started. He was able to reach the 7 summits, so the 7 peaks, the highest peaks of each continent. Plus, for a guy from Jordan, he skied to the North and South Pole. He learned how to ski at 39.
Yeah,
And
never
this
too
was
late.
inspiring because growing up, being spoiled, having all the education, and this guy just creates this massive impact. And then a girl challenged him, an 11-year-old girl, a cancer patient, challenged him because he was a keynote speaker. And then this girl said, "But what, and so what? So you climb mountains, so what?" And so this cancer patient challenged him to climb for something more meaningful than just for the sake of climbing. Mm-hmm. And since then he collected $6 million for cancer patients.
Wow.
So this 11-year-old girl challenged this guy who was super successful.
Right.
And since then he has done so much, and he has taken 6 women from Jordan. He has taken them to the Mount Everest, and it was the first time there were, Jordan Arabian women on Mount Everest, and all of them had a mission of impact. So he really inspired me, that we are capable of so much more than we think.
Oh, we definitely. You brought up so many people I've had on the show, from people who've climbed all the summits blind, and to Scott Harrison, who created Charity Water when he was just, he admits that he was just a partying kind of guy, and one day decided to change his life, and now he has this unbelievable charity. The people who are able to do these things always inspire me. And I'm curious, as you listen to what you're talking about and what we've discussed about your book, what have you changed? What have you incorporated from these stories? Is there some major insight that changed what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So I think when I started out, I was putting those people on pedestals, and I realized that they have the same challenges. So they experience divorces, they have illness and all that. Mm-hmm. So all of them are humans. But I realized that I'm as successful and extraordinary as everyone. Everyone is, right? Right. So that's what I realized, that we are all extraordinary. And what set them apart from the normal people, there is no normal, but from the normal people or ordinary people, is that they do the unthinkable. So, and unthinkable was the common denominator of that. That's why the book is called Unthinkable. And so what I do daily, I do something unthinkable each day. And I ask myself this question. I have it in front of me. What do you disrupt today? So habits are structures, and every habit has a limit. Every structure has a limit. So if you do the same habits, even if it's a 10K run, at some point you will reach the limitation of this habit. So you have to create habit and disrupt them. And what I realized about unthinkable is actually every person has the unthinkable inside. It's a decision. And you probably would call it curiosity, right? So everyone has the immense power to achieve unthinkable things. And unthinkable is not something, you don't have to climb Everest to do the unthinkable. It can be that you have an accident and you lost ability to walk. And some people make it back to be able to walk. So that's unthinkable for that person. So unthinkable isn't the grand things. It's really personal, and it's connected to you. So it's personal, it's connected to your purpose, and it has to be connected with catching your dreams. Just doing the unthinkable of the sake of doing the unthinkable, there is no purpose in that. But if you catch your dreams, you become the best version of yourself, and as the best version of yourself, you're the best version for all the people around you, and you have the most impact in your life.
It ties so much into what I research, as you mentioned, with curiosity, but also perception. And what's interesting to me, having taught thousands of business courses, is what seems very simple to one person can seem overwhelming to another. It's the same exact thing. And there's a mindset involved of how we look at it. And with curiosity, I look at it as, getting out of status quo thinking. And that's what you're kind of saying too. But then you're also saying we need to have these habits and practices to get out of our status quo. How can you have habits and practices and still do something that gets you out of the doing habits and practices? You know what I'm saying? It seems like there's a little bit of a conflict in some ways if you think about it initially.
It's what I learned in my while researching for this book is that whatever I was taught is absolutely untrue for me. So it's all paradox. So what you are getting at, it's the balance between, it's a balance, it's all a balance act, right? So to live in flow, I talk a lot about flow, right? To live in flow, you need a structure, because if you look at the river, a river only flows if the river has a riverbed, right? And that's the same for us, for rituals. So the rituals give you structure, but then to be in flow and to be your best, you have to create space to explore, to be curious, right? Because if we stay in our comfort zone, curiosity is about going outside of your comfort zone. So the unthinkable is always outside of the comfort zone, right? Just sitting on the sofa and just being there doesn't have a big impact. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's all a matter of balance.
I think, you can't be completely structured, but you have to have some structure to get to where you're going. And I think it's an interesting concept individually, but you also talk about this with teams. So how do you work the unthinkable mindset when you're dealing with a team?
Yeah, I think that's really difficult. So I was a lead manager in corporations, and I try to take these principles, into the corporate environment, but then you really have to, it's a paradigm shift. So most people are not comfortable to get outside of their structures, because they seem to have having the control is an illusion. Yeah. Right. So it's really difficult, and I think people are comfortable to be in the linear, because it's so predictable, even though we don't know if it's going to happen. So I cannot really give you a good answer how to do it, because it has to do individually. But what I learned is that people are not passionate about, if I tell them you get 2% more efficient, that doesn't move the people. That's something that the managers say, the leaders say. But if you want to move people, you have to give them a reason that is connected to the fulfillment. So if I tell someone, if we do this, we work better as a team, and we will be more fulfilled, and we have more space, and we maybe do less meetings, but we have more time to do massive impact work. So I think, I don't know if this answers your question really well, but I realized that I had to give tools for the person to change, to impact themselves on a personal level, and then they come to the place of work in a much better state. So that's what I was doing. But I'm a little bit awkward, because I have a different point of view. So my perception is different. So sometimes I had to deal with that he's just a surfer guy and he's not so serious.
Well, I think it's what you're talking about is kind of something I talked about yesterday. I was actually interviewed by the CEO of coaching.com. Alex interviewed me. And, these coaches have a lot of stress, like to help these organizations. You obviously coach, so you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot to deal with when you've got all these different personalities, and when you're trying to work with all this, it becomes a cultural change. And I teach a lot of courses where I ask a student, I didn't write this question, but it was written for me in one of the courses I teach. Is it easier to change an individual or the overall corporate culture, is one of the questions that they ask them in this class. And there's no right answer, obviously, but because everybody has a different perception of this. But how hard is it to change the culture to get this unthinkable mindset?
I would so my perception is that you cannot change the organization if you don't change the individual. So for me, in my experience, and I have been now in this 16 years in continuous improvement management, I realized that if the person doesn't change from within, so if you don't change on a personal level, you cannot change your organization. So it goes from me to the team to the organization. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And so and I think I was so frustrated in the corporate. That's why I want to step out, because I felt like the people weren't open to disrupt themselves. That was too far outside of the comfort zone. So yeah, I feel I failed in that, but I feel that as a dad, I have the chance of creating this culture in my family, and the same principles of a company culture applies to family culture. It's just a smaller scope, but that's what I do in my family with my kids. You know, I create structure and disruption, and I create space for being, and I create possibilities for action. So I do that in my family.
Yeah, and it's so important. And when you're talking about disruption, it reminds me of having Jay Salmon on my show. He wrote Disrupt You and Disrupt Yourself. He was talking about how every day you should write down things that you wish would be changed, that drive you crazy or whatever. And eventually you'll come up with an idea for a company or a product or something that you could change the world. And I like that idea. It's a really good book. And I think sometimes it's just simple things that we need to do to just tweak what we do already. But what I found really interesting about you is that you use your surfing and water behind you. If anybody's watching this, you've got from the book, the surf behind you. You use it as a metaphor for living your unthinkable life of limitless potential. What's the deal with the water and the surfing? And give me a little backstory on that.
Yeah, so when I was 17, 18, I had the opportunity to go to California and be a foreign exchange student. And I had this big dream to learn how to surf. And that's actually at 18, I really felt in my element in the water. So all my life I felt in my element in the water, so it was natural to go to the surfing. And I just realized so many times that the ocean and the waves are a good teacher to learn about flow, because I say in life we have the waves, right? So we have opportunities and challenges, and it happens like waves. Like in the ocean, sometimes you're just doing your life, and suddenly you have 3 wipeouts, like I don't know, like separation happens, you lose someone. It always comes together. So how to stay in flow when something like that happens? And I realized that the same as I do in surfing, I can apply to life. So in every wave is different, so every challenge is different. And I know that there are many business courses that teach you how to create the organization like Elon Musk or like Jeff Bezos. So I studied Amazon business case, and this wave will never happen again, right? So if you have this, if you learn from this, it will never be exactly the same. So every wave is different. So you have to adapt yourself, right? And you have to be really present. Of course, it's good to study the history, but I think it's really good to be in the present. And when we are in the present, actually, that's when the exponential happens, right? When we detach from the past experiences and detach from thinking about the future, then we are not in scarcity mindset. And I think Peter Diamandis talks about, and I know you've talked to him, he talks about abundance. And if you're scared from the future and regret the past, you cannot embrace the present. So surfing taught me patience, and surfing taught me how to deal with wipeouts. And it's a really amazing metaphor.
It's interesting. I was a swimmer, so I get the water. And I liked your analogy earlier about the river needs to flow and needs a path and all that. And and I want to come back to that with how do we make this path? What are the steps, and how do we get this mindset? I mean, it sounds good. I know we want to get out of the status quo. I agree with you that Amazon thing won't happen again exactly as it did. And the people like that ran Kodak or Blockbuster, some of these we're hoping that they could keep doing this over and over again, but it goes away and you got to learn a new way. So how do we learn this new way?
Yes, I use one ritual I have that's what I mentioned before with this with the daily questions. Mm-hmm. So you can ask yourself bigger questions, then you get bigger answers, right? So in my case, I ask myself, how do I disrupt today? So I think each day, and this is a ritual, so I do this every day. I think about ways how to disrupt myself, and that can be as simple as when I go to the store, I buy different things, and when you do grocery shopping, it's a disruption. If you buy different vegetables and different foods, you have to disrupt yourself, or you take another path to your job, right? So creating different experiences will get you different results. So that's how I acquire a mindset like that. And it sounds so simple, but it really works. So when you ask yourself such question, and for you can be something different, but for me is one question I like is, so I do something unthinkable each day. Even, today in the morning, I was in the Lake of Zurich, which is, I guess, 50 Fahrenheit today. And I stayed maybe 10 minutes in there, and I did swim. I led a group, a few people I led to do that. Uh-huh. And so that's a disruption today. Uh-huh. And so you can continue disrupting yourself each day. And so that's I think that's a simple practice you can do, and it's connected to your curiosity, right?
Yeah, I think so. Because it's about, you don't know what you don't know. My husband makes fun of me when I say that. He goes, "What does that mean exactly?" And I go, well, there's so many things you've never tried, and you're making your decisions based on limited knowledge. You're assuming you're not going to like something, but maybe you've only had a tiny bit of the experience, and you don't even know what else is out there.
Yes,
and I'd love to realize that, and I think that probably was a lot of what Dr. Marcel and I found when we wrote our book on perception. Because you're sitting in the one spot that no one else is sitting in this spot, just like no one else is sitting in that Amazon spot, never will be again. And everything's constantly changing, and you have to open up your mind to what everybody else is seeing, what their reality is and their perceptions. But I think a lot of us can be control freaks sometimes, and we like things to be a certain way. And I'm as guilty as anyone else on that one. So how do we let go?
I think that was the biggest learning I had in the last few years, and I think that's not something I say I do it well yet. I practice it daily to let go, like of emotions. When you go through divorce, you have to let go. Or when my kids walk out of the door, I only see them, I don't know, a week later. You have to let go. Mm-hmm. So it seems so simple. Letting go is actually, it's a passive act. It's not letting go. It's not active, but it's like letting it be. And that's so difficult. And in my book, I talk so much about surrender. Mm-hmm. And so for me, in surfing or in the cold water, or in situations in relationship, it's actually unthinkable. It's not about being tough. It's about surrendering to the element, right? Right. Surrendering to the water, surrendering to a difficult situation, surrendering to that cold water. You don't fight the cold water because you always lose. If you fight against the ocean, you know that when you have done an open water swim, if you fight the current, you will lose. If you fight the waves, you lose. So surrender for me is not giving up; it's giving in, and it's being totally relaxed and not fighting it. So that's what I practice daily. And for me, when I'm in a state of absolute panic, that even happens when I was surfing. I was in my element surfing, and suddenly I have this thought: oh my God, I don't know how I have enough coaching clients to sustain myself financially. So going from a moment of pure bliss, I'm suddenly in a moment of where the ego comes in and okay, that's all good. You live in flow, but how do I take care of my kids? And so in that moment, what I practice is gratitude, right? That grounds me and say, okay, that's letting go, being grateful, and that's maybe it sounds really too simple, but it's really powerful.
As you're talking about this, it reminds me of that Chris Hemsworth show that's out. Have you watched it on Disney, where he
Limitless?
What, Disney Plus or whatever it was? What is it?
Yeah, it's called Limitless.
Limitless, yes. And that was I really enjoyed watching that. And he has to do these horrible things. Talk about unthinkable, walking across some of that stuff. That cold water. I'm sure you could relate to some of the cold water stuff and some of the stuff you do. But I think that it was a really impactful show. I hope people watch that because I love that. But you do your own thing. You do this mastermind, as I mentioned at the beginning. So I want to know, what do you do in these masterminds? And tell me a little more about that.
So what I've done now is, sometimes it's like speeches from different people coming in, and because storytelling really disrupts ourselves. And the other part, a concrete example, is the cold water. So I took a group of people to the cold water. That's what I do often. So that's what I do weekly. Mm-hmm. On Tuesday mornings, I take people to the cold water, and that's all winter long in Switzerland.
Oh,
so meaning, it's really cool. It's not like when you're in Texas and you have ice bath, because outside it's warm, but outside is cold too. So it's really disruptive. And that, for me, the cold water is a really, really good example, how much you're capable of, because people, before they start, they feel they are not capable of that. And everyone I've taken was capable of doing that. And so it's called, now they call it Wim Hof, but I've done that all my life. So I've always been drawn to the cold water as a child. And I didn't realize that.
What did you say they call it?
So there is the guy that really popularized it is a Dutch guy called Wim Hof. And he's really famous he's on all the podcasts, Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss and all those podcasts. So he created a whole method around it, and it's about, it has elements like yoga and breathing and the cold water, and I've adapted that, but I've done that already in my childhood. I was always drawn to the cold water.
I got drawn to the cold water accidentally last week. I was in California, went to Big Bear, and I was going to get on my kayak in the 38-degree cold water.
Wow.
And getting in the kayak, it hit a wave, and I went face first into the water, and that wakes you up. I'll tell you what. But I didn't stay in long. I have to give you credit for that. I haven't really experimented with the cold water things. I remember going to a couple of these events, Tony Robbins, Stu Mantis, and all those were all there, and they were a couple of different people there were talking about doing it. And I see a lot of people do that. I haven't quite embraced that yet, but it's on my bucket list to try. I love the water, the cold part. I'm a Phoenix girl. I'm from Arizona, so I'm cold when it's 70. So I got to give you credit for doing that. I think, though, all these things that you said were really important for people. I really enjoyed reading your book, and I learned a lot of things, and I loved how much it tied into what I research and what I'm trying to get out there as well. It's the getting out of doing things the same old way. If you want to grow, you have to let go a little bit. You have to think of things that you never would have thought of and push yourself. Because for me, I see too many people exist instead of live. They just kind of are ants on their trail, and they just, it's Groundhog Day movie where you just get up, you do the same thing, you go to bed. And it's just so boring to me. And so to some other people, they don't find it boring. They think that that's okay. What do you say to those people who say, yeah, I'm fine? Do we need to make them more limitless and doing unthinkable things? Or do you or would they be happier, or should you just let them be ants?
I think I would let them be and first work with the people who want to change, who want to do something exciting. And this doesn't mean it's not a hierarchy. It's not that the CEOs are doing more the unthinkable. They can be totally stuck in their ways, and the homeless person can be totally ready to disrupt their limitations, right? So going for a homeless person to go to a job is really challenging, because it's not easy for them to clean up and to be ready and to be responsible. They don't even they don't have the bank stuff, so it's hard for them to get a job. So for me, unthinkable is not for a certain group of people. It's really for the ones that are really ready to go the next step. And I've heard that, like, the tipping point, if one, I think that's the same for curiosity. If you can shift 1% of the world population, you will have a tipping point where you have a paradigm shift. So you don't have to think about 8 billion people. You can just shift the 1%, and you will reach a tipping point. And before you said you talked about the Walking Dead, like the people that seem like they have checked out. That, like people, I call like the people that say they are mature. I find it really, really sad, because what happens to nature when it's mature? The fruit falls, right? It's dead. So I don't like to be in maturity. I like to be exploring and living. So like the book of Michelle Obama, she talks about becoming. So I don't want people to be a noun. I want people to be a verb. So right. Stay moving, active. And a friend of mine who is actually producing the music for my book. So I'm going to have an album that shares the message of my book in vibration, so in music, right? So not touching the mind, but touching the body. Right? The music touches much more than the mind, right? And my friend Oli Gabriel, he's a musician. He's amazing. He's so talented, and he has a really cool song that I would recommend you to listen, which covers exactly that. It's called "Living Alive." Living alive. So are you living, or are you just alive? Right? That's exactly the question.
Right. That's
so this is challenging, like the status quo. Are you just living? Are you living, or are you just existing? You know?
Yeah, I think that it's such an important distinction, and I don't think a lot of people recognize when they've gotten into a rut and they're just doing the same old thing. And I think I meet a lot of people who friends who all take hiking or do something they've never done. They go, I had no idea that this life was even out here. I was on, in New York, and there's cement, and and there's no mountains, and so I think surrounding yourself with people who are the same kind of unthinkable people can be really helpful. A lot of what I teach in a lot of the courses is the importance of mentorship and coaching and some of the stuff, all the things you do, right? So what would you say you want people to take away the most from your work with Unthinkable? I mean, did we touch on everything? What if you get the last word here, what would you like everybody to know?
So I think, well, what is really important is that everyone has the chance to do the unthinkable. So everyone is extraordinary, and it's just a decision. It's like with curiosity, embrace it and just be it. It's a decision. And I think doing the unthinkable is about being your best self, your authentic self. And so that's so important, that you're yourself, right? That you live your best self. And if you live your best self, you're not a copy. Because as a lean manager, I was replaced within a few hours, right? So when I quit my job, a few hours later, they can find someone else. But if I talk about surfing and I talk about my stories, I'm not replaceable, because I'm unique. I'm the only one. So do the unthinkable, be extraordinary. Everyone is, and find something that the heart calls you to. So it's connected to your dreams and to your purpose. And going after what excites you is never random. So at 18, I started surfing, or 17, and now it becomes a part of my career. So it's never random when you follow your excitement.
That is so important. And I really enjoyed reading your book, and I was so excited for it to be out. And I was really appreciative that you wanted to be on the show. I wanted to make sure people could find your book and find you. Is there a website or something you'd like to share?
Yeah, so my main website is unthinkableliving.com, and the book can be found on Amazon, and it's now in Kindle and paperback on Amazon. And yeah, you find it under my name. There are many like books or movies that are called Unthinkable, but if you look for my name, Unthinkable Life
Marcel.
Teachings from Soul Surfer, Marcel Kuhn, you will find it. And in a month or so, it will be out as an audiobook as well.
That's
and
awesome.
Stay tuned, follow me, because it's my friend Ollie Gabriel will produce the music. So in the next months, however long it will take, the music will be out, and I'm so excited about that, because I don't know any book that has an album that is connected to it.
That's awesome. I didn't know that about it. So thanks for letting me know on that. And I'm looking forward to that part. And this was so much fun, Marcel. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.